Okay, ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see Panic Ritter, Tony Sharp, Jacob, Austin Gregory, Bruce, Brendan, Ethan K, Travi. What's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord. Head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel. Be sure your questions are answered there, guys. Of course, at the end of today's show, we do have our daily mailbag segment in which we'll take all of your questions, your comments, and your voicemails here on this Wednesday. I want to hear from you as we look ahead of this weekend's game in College Station against the Texas A&M Aggies. I want to say thanks, by the way, to the folks over at Tex Ags who had me on their show this morning. Had a blast chatting with those guys. Really good stuff looking ahead to this weekend's game. We'll actually have David Nuno of Tex Ags. You might recall him from over the summer, friend of the show. We'll have him back on Friday's show, guys. Friday is going to be a jam-packed TDC. We're going to have 3 guests on that show. Mark Ryan cannot go tomorrow, so we are sliding him to Friday. We'll then, of course, have Jake Crane, and then we'll play that conversation with David Nuno. So back to back, 3 guests in a row on Friday. That, of course, going along with our Q&A, if you will. Tomorrow, of course, Prediction Thursday. I'll lock in all of my picks for South Carolina in a Gamecocks game against Texas A&M. On that note, guys, by the way, normally on Wednesday, we do our drive around the SEC for whatever the weekend upcoming is. And then on Thursday, we would do our SEC pick'em. So that's a change to your normally scheduled programming. From now on, our drive around the SEC, it's going to include the picks for the games. I realized when I was doing it, I was like, separating it just felt unnecessary. So we're actually going to combine those two things, the drive around the SEC and the SEC pick'em. So today, I'll actually lock in all of my picks for the SEC slate. And then tomorrow, guys, you'll know my picks specifically for the Gamecocks and Aggies, whoever South Carolina's playing that weekend. So we've got that. We got position unit comparison on a Wednesday. Of course, guys, we do it every single Wednesday. And like I mentioned, later in the show, we'll get into your questions, your comments, and your voicemails as well. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Do not forget, on Saturday, we are in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. Carolina Cigars will be in the Cigar Lounge watching South Carolina take on Texas A&M. All of our low country Gamecocks and Gamecocks in general are welcome. Going to be a really, really good time. Planning on getting there around 11 o'clock or so for the noon kickoff. And either way, guys, I'll say you this. Maybe my best selling point of the weekend, because I think we all realize at this point the tall task that is South Carolina going to Kyle Field, trying to get a win. Those cigars are going to get smoked either way. So I say that to say we're going to have a good time no matter what the final result is. We're going to be there enjoying football, enjoying camaraderie, enjoying conversation. Full day of college football with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party upcoming immediately following the South Carolina game. We'll do the post-game call-in show from Carolina Cigars. It's going to be a really good time. So, guys, I hope to see you there. Come on out. Looking forward to it. Going to be a blast. That being said, again, we got a jam-packed show today. We kick things off with our good friend. He joins us every single Wednesday, Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. Chris, what's going on, my friend? How are you? Appreciate you doing this once again.
Yeah, man, of course. I kind of want to go to Hilton Head now. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. We're actually heading out this afternoon. So going to be there a couple of days. We'll be posted up doing the live show there Thursday and Friday. Going to play a little bit of golf while we're down there too. So it's going to be a full-on weekend, man, which, you need all those things, I think, to distract us what's going on the field with South Carolina right now. First thing, Chris, before we get into everything, how much fun have you had with Tennessee fans on social media this week?
It means so much to me that you asked. And it like cracks me up, because it doesn't matter if I'm on here. I was on Sirius XM with SC Network this morning, whatever other shows I have. It's been the first question that's been asked ever since. I'm frothing still at talking shit to Tennessee fans because for a full year, and you guys like I think you guys may have forgotten it because we got it in inverse years, right? Like where like you guys beat the shit out of them last year, and Bama comes in and loses in like horrific fashion, but it could not have happened in a more perfect way because to not only beat Tennessee in the way they did, but to watch them bitch about the refs is so comically beautiful. Because last year, you're talking about a Bama team that goes in there, had 17 penalties for 130 yards. I remember at one point Bama got called for 5 offensive penalties in a span of 3 plays. Like it was ridiculous. And to go in there and beat them this weekend and blank them in the second half and have like Joe Milton hit the crane kick and all that kind of shit and like talking, it's so there's not a fan base that deserves it more. And I said it on our podcast on Sunday night. I was like, listen, I went on this whole rant about it. And I was like, I understand it's hard for you to hear, Tennessee fans, but I just want to reiterate to you right now that I do not care. I do not care. All of you deserve everything you just got.
You deserve nothing and get less.
Yeah.
So, or get less and deserve nothing, I should say.
Yeah.
Either way, Chris, speaking specifically on that game, obviously I would say a gutsy performance by Bama to come out in the second half. I mean, it looked somewhat bleak at halftime. Tennessee's up 20-7. Maybe you start replaying what happened last year, and oh my goodness, here we go again. Crimson Tide find a way, outscore Tennessee, 24-0 in the second half, I think it was. Yeah. Get the W. Where's the greatest growth you're seeing with this Alabama team over a week in, week out basis? Obviously, you've got the bye week. Then you go into that LSU game, which is the one we've all been looking forward to. Yeah. But where do you feel like from week 1 to now, and again in that win against Tennessee, like where are you seeing the greatest progression with this Bama team?
Well, I'll go back to last year instead of week 1, just because I think it helps. It's an easier answer, and that's coaching. And that sounds stupid because when you talk about coaching in Alabama, you have Nick Saban, who's the greatest coach of all time, and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, that those halftime adjustments are something you haven't seen from Alabama over the past couple of years. I was very big on the fact that Bama fans were bitching and moaning about the wrong things when you talk about, Pete Golding at DC and Bill O'Brien offensive coordinator. You had a top 10 offense and defense and scoring offense and defense in the country last year, and people still wanted out the door. And now you look at offense, and it's like, man, I think a lot of people would probably want that Bill O'Brien offense back. You know what I mean? But from a defensive standpoint, it's so bad to think about what they did with the talent they had there. And I never thought I would say this, but it's like, I wish that Will Anderson had another year in Kevin Steele's defense, which is just, it's such a weird sentence to say because, I mean, they didn't turn anyone over. Like they had 3 interceptions all last season. That like 3. That's almost impossible to do with how much talent they had on the defensive side of the ball. But those coaching in-game adjustments, like, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. I compared it to, I don't care. This is your show, so I'm going to say it anyway. But I compared it on my show that watching Bama football is like when your significant other gives you permission to go in the back door. It's because it's going to be very uncomfortable for at least one side for almost the entire time, and it's not fun except for one person for the most part. And that's so terrible. But it's just so awful. It's so tough to watch. And you talk about the A&M game where you're down 7 at the half and the sky is falling on social media for fans, and then you're down 13 against Tennessee. And the Tennessee thing looked bleak. But, it's like you kind of lay out what you have to do step by step, which is you come back out at half, you got to score on the opening drive. They do it in 2 plays. You got to make stops, and you got to turn them over. And they did all those things. And it's been really fun. It sounds stupid and arrogant as a Bama fan, but I think Bama fans are so entitled and obnoxious in general that it's hard for them to remember like what it's like to be a fan of like, this is fun. Like this is, I went back and rewatched the Tennessee second half. It's been fun because you're watching a team kind of grow up in front of you. And then also it's like all the games matter again. And for a while there, as stupid as it sounds, like you're talking about a team that has like a 4-game season and you're kind of hurry up and get to the next one constantly. So
it was kind of like being a fan of the Patriots when Tom Brady was the quarterback. Like the regular season's kind of a footnote. It's like, just get us to the season. And I kind of equate it to cheering for Gamecocks women's basketball over the last couple of years, where it's like the regular season, I hate to say it, is so meaningless because if you don't win the national title, the season was a failure anyways. So it's like, it's like the season doesn't start until like the Elite Eight. Like
Yeah.
truly, it's crazy as that sounds. Tacoma we go, Chris. And before we get into the game, how surprised, if surprised at all? I think I asked you this a couple of weeks ago, but I mean, I'm sure you're seeing the chatter starting to increase. And I know with the portal, with an IL, right, we don't, coaches aren't getting quite the window they used to. But I mean, I'm someone that I think just how quickly a portion of Gamecock Nation has turned on Shane Beamer has been really surprising to me, because this was a guy with the offseason, Chris, I would have told you he was untouchable. Now, granted, I knew that no coach was immune to the effects of losing, but like it even stuns me to see that. And I'm not saying it's the majority. Obviously, it's not. But like there's a portion that it's like they're not just disgruntled and being upset. That's warranted. But like they seriously want change. And it's almost like people have been sitting on these takes about Beamer that they haven't been able to say or just have not said because things have been going well. I mean, are you surprised at that all? Or do you just feel like that's modern day college football? And if you don't have it rolling by year 3, it's like get that guy out of there and get the next guy in there.
Yeah, and I'm surprised. Like, I think before the season, I made the joke repeatedly. I was like, Beamer and Pittman. It's like two guys that feel untouchable that everyone's pulling for. I mean, I called Beamer Skinny Sam Pittman repeatedly, and like, I think that the ire and the response from fans is both fair and unfair at the same time, if that makes sense. And part of it's because it's like, like you're right. Like in this day and age of football, you want to win now, and it's not going to get any easier for the SEC because you're going to add Texas and Oklahoma next year. I've been on this front of this, like, from the moment they announced it, that there were like 3 teams that I thought this was really bad for that jumped up to my mind immediately was South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Kentucky. And those are 3 teams that like you've kind of had a ceiling like above your head. And I fully understand what the 3 years in the early 2010s did and were for South Carolina football. I fully get it. I mean, you're talking about one of 4 programs in the country to have 11 wins each season for 3 straight years. That's not easy to do. At the same time, it's hard to look at this program and think like, all right, we got Georgia sitting above you. Tennessee's got it rolling a little bit, at least with the recruiting trail. And then Florida is who knows what, but they still beat y'all last year. Or this year. I mean, the thing for Beamer is like you kind of expected this to be a slow build, right? Like, I mean, like Muschamp really ran it into the ground. Then you fire him in a COVID year, you get Beamer to come out, and it's a big task and undertaking for what he's done. I think what has been the biggest concern is like Beamer hasn't helped himself at all, which is surprising because he is a likable dude. He is, and he wants to be there, and you can tell it matters to him. But like these post-game press conferences where there's always something to that like you're left with, whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in between. It's usually not in between, but like there's just always something that he says that you're like, dude, just like help yourself a little bit and don't say shit like that. And then the other thing is that like, he's not helping himself in terms of like, what was the biggest win of the offseason last year? It was signing Nick Harbor. And I hate to keep, beating a dead horse, but it's like, if you're going to lose, at least lose in like a fun way. Like, there's just no way you can tell me that kid can't be a part of the offense. And if you're trying to, like, I don't think he's trying to save his job by any means, but it's annoying and it's very frustrating to watch when it's like, all right, well, you've gotten to a point where you're what, 2-6?
2-5 with A&M looming.
So 2-6, and like, and not to be rude, but like,
no, I mean,
maybe they go on the road. Like, it would be awesome.
Two touchdown underdogs. So I mean, it's fair. It's fair.
I don't know what Vegas is thinking there,
yeah,
but I mean,
A&M minus 14 is the line in that one.
Oh, I would hammer South Carolina probably, but South Carolina, like, you're not really helping yourself, and it's like, if you're going to lose, at least lose in a way where it's like, hey, look what we have coming back next year, and I just can't figure out for the life of me what Beamer's doing. Because you've got a guy like Nick Harbor, who's clearly the best athlete on the team. Like he is the biggest. He's one of the best athletes in the country. Like, just like bottom line, no matter how you look at it, right? And you've got a kid that's just sitting on the sideline. And then whenever you do put him in, he explodes. It's like, he had that one catch for like 45 yards 2 weeks ago against whoever it was, and then I think he had 2 for 52 this week against Mizzou. If the offense is too difficult for him to understand it, then dumb it down for him. And if it's like if he's I just cannot for the life of me understand why he's not in. And to be very clear too, I'm not saying that the offense is too difficult for him to understand. I'm just saying I can't understand what the reasons are to keep him off the field. So if that's one of them, make an adjustment. That's you like it's at some point you need to cater the whole offense to him. But like, what offense or like what do you have to lose here besides him in the portal?
And to your point, Chris, I think they're not going to have much of a choice this week, but having to use him more because it sounds like Xavier Legette may not play. He's questionable for this game. South Carolina, I mean, is just they are decimated with injuries across the board on the offensive line, especially. And to your point about the pressers too, it's interesting. When you're winning, nobody really cares what you say at a press conference. When you're losing, anything and everything that can be used against you will be used against you. All of a sudden, that stuff matters. So, I mean, Gamecocks get throttled 34-12 at Mizzou, which admittedly, Chris, maybe I drank some of the Beamer Kool-Aid or whatever. My Garnet Black blood, I mistakenly picked South Carolina to win, thought they would rally around the broken foot and everything that had happened. And it's just a bad football team. There's no other way to put it. Mizzou was a very good football team, by the way. We should give a lot of credit to Missouri and what they are. But, again, I just think of right now, Chris, it's, losing is one thing, but I think how it's happening, in year 3, it's year 3 of the Beamer tenure, and you're going on the road, taking on a team that Gamecock fans want to believe they're on the same level as, and many Gamecock fans want to believe South Carolina still is ahead of Missouri as a program, and Mizzou is trash, and they shouldn't be in the SEC, and you're getting throttled. You know what I mean? So, like, that's where the chatter's coming from, obviously.
Well, let me say this too, though, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I think this is one of those things where it's like you need to check that whole arrogance at the door right now if you're South Carolina fans, and that's like that's not saying that you're not a great pro or you're not a good program.
And Chris, I've done that many times. I would like to say that I've done that. Like my immediate takeaway was you got to stop. Like everybody's just got to stop. Like you can't lose 5 in a row and be a better. But you're the better pro. It just doesn't.
Maybe the fan base will hear it better from me than you. So gather around. But like this isn't a negative thing about your program. It's just stating the facts of where you are right now. You're not a better program than Mizzou. You're probably not a better program than Kentucky. And if you really look at where these programs lie in the SEC East, just the SEC East alone, you're probably about 5th. You're ahead of Vandy. Who am I missing? Florida. You're not ahead of Florida. You're not ahead of Georgia.
So Carolina would be 6th. So Carolina would be 6th or a tie 5th.
Right now, I think that's probably an accurate thing where they are. And here's the thing. I'm talking about this year. This is not an end result of the Beamer era. We've seen the highs of the Beamer era in terms of wins. We haven't seen it from like a full season. But it's not like you guys have had the best run of luck anyway. It's like your offensive line and defensive line has been really, really bad, especially in the offensive line. And the offensive line and then the receiver position, which is arguably your best and deepest position going into the year, has decimated with injuries. So it's like, it's tough. I've said this over and over and over again with Bama and receivers, Clemson and quarterback and then receiver. Like, it's hard to replace year after year of really, really good talent, sometimes generational talent. The best talent that's come from South Carolina over the past couple of years has been defensive back and probably a little bit on defensive line. And it's hard to replace some of those guys. And like, I don't care if Jordan Burch didn't pan out at Carolina. He's still a 5-star recruit that's right down the road. And it's a really good player that's doing pretty well at Oregon. It's hard to replace those kind of guys. So like, yeah, I know it's year 3, but this isn't always the trajectory of like how things work. I mean, fuck, man. Like, if we're talking about just my life in general, we're here. We're here all the time. And maybe for right now, you're here. I promise you're going to come back up. But you also have to, like, you can't overreact in, like, the moments like this where it's like the sky is falling. We need to replace Beamer right now. Because who are you going to go get that's somehow going to be necessarily better than Beamer? And I don't think Beamer's that bad.
Success isn't linear, and it's funny, Chris, how in real life, obviously, I mean, I can attest as an entrepreneur, like we allow for failure and we embrace it, look at it as a great thing. But when it comes to sports, it's just frowned upon. I would ask you this, Chris, as someone that I think you're detached enough from it
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, and again, I'm somewhat stunned by it that this
Mhm.
week, this has been a lot of the commentary and content we've produced that talking about where we sit year 3 of the Beamer era, how long should he get, right? I'm getting
Yeah.
questions like, when should we pull the trigger, what have you? Like, you're looking at this from the outside perspective. What do you think the window should be? I mean, I just because I look at it as I think Beamer gets until 2025 at minimum, which would be
Mhm.
year 5. If South Carolina is still meddling around 5-7 or 6-6,
Yeah.
Chris, I just don't think coaches get that long anymore. Like I
Yeah.
just I think once you get to year 5, into year 5, you know what you have for the most
Yeah.
part. I know Steve Spurrier got longer, but he's Steve Spurrier, right? You were
Right.
going to give him as long as he wanted. So I'm curious, asking you, like, do you just because I think Arkansas and South Carolina in similar positions, it's like maybe you're just better off riding it out with this guy, but at the same time, you can't just ignore very obvious red flags that may present themselves. So, I mean, is there an easy answer in your mind for this, or is it something you just kind of have to see how it plays out? I mean, it's the culture is going to be great.
Mhm.
Beamer's going to have that infectious energy. He wants to be there, but as well as I do, it's a wins and losses business, and if you're not winning, that trumps everything else.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think it's like part of it is the fact that it's like I I hate to say this, I just that 2011 to 2013 season ruined your fan base, and it gave you this like taste of like, oh my gosh, like this is what we should be every year, and it's something you've never been. It's that's something you've never been, and you were for 3 years. And I'm not saying this to be a dick, but what did you win during those 3 years? That was so like you didn't win a division title, let alone a conference or national, anything like that. So part of me is looking at it, it's like I think I miss the days of old where it's like, you know what? Like I think Pittman, you give him the keys to that until he's done. And because like if you're Arkansas, what is the ceiling? Especially, I know they're going to go away from divisions at least for a year, but like what is the ceiling for the SEC West? And now if you're Beamer, you're coming into not only the SEC East, which was down for a while, but you're coming in at this time where it's like Kirby has the best program in the country and hates you for some reason. Tennessee is coming in and getting their entire. I mean, Tennessee people. I always forget how much older I am than people because I'm 37, but like people are too young now to remember that Tennessee was a dominant force nationally. Like they would recruit from coast to coast and put like kids on. I can't tell you how many kids I saw come out of Tennessee from like California and Hawaii and like Oregon and just be like top tier studs. And like they're getting back to being like a national blue blood because of NIL and stuff. It's a tough time for Beamer. I think you give him till year 5. And the other part is that if he's 5-7 going into year 5, then yeah, give him the boot. He's got to go. But it speaks a lot to the fact of like I'm not pinning all this on Beamer on the field. What I am pinning to Beamer is South Carolina is a perfect example of how important coaching hires are and how important it is to hire the correct offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator and how much success you can have as a head coach because of the people you hire. You look at there's not a better example in the history of college football than Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron in 2019 went out and got Joe Burrow. Then that was 2018, but he goes out and gets Joe Burrow. Then he comes out and gets what's his name, the passing game coordinator, who was like
Brady, right?
Joe Brady.
Yeah.
He goes out and gets Joe Brady and keeps Insminger, and it's like all of a sudden we have these receivers that were one's a 2-star recruit, one's a 4-star recruit. They're running on everyone, and then we have this new innovative type of offense that's like torching everyone.
Weren't they picked to finish like 3rd in the West that year or something? I think
probably. I know that was one of Bama's revenge tour years. I know that because of 2018. But yeah, I mean, like I think it just goes to show you that, and I don't think that they have a bad hire on offense. I think he's been very hamstrung with the injuries, but defense has been atrocious, and you have to go out and go get yourself a D coordinator that's going to turn this thing around because I just yardage doesn't really matter on the scoreboard, but my God, if you could give up like 100 less yards a game, which doesn't seem to be that difficult considering how much they're giving up. That kind of stuff matters.
Yeah, it's been rough sledding for the Gamecocks defense, to say the least. You look across the board of the statistics, Marler, and What's scary is if it's not one thing, it's another, in the sense
Right.
of when South Carolina says, you know what, our secondary is terrible, last in the country in pass defense. We're going to sell out to stop the pass. Well, then you give up over 200 yards on the ground. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you just can't win. And on that note, you take on Texas A&M this weekend. You got your reaction to the line. Aggies are a 14-point favorite. They come off the bye week. South Carolina goes to a place in Kyle Field. They've never won before. South Carolina, Gamecock Nation is dejected. This is Marler, I hate to say this, but this week it feels very must-champish era, where it's like the fan base already knows the game is over before it's even started, and that's a really unfortunate place to be in. That being said, though, we can't overstate the incompetence of Texas A&M and what they're likely to do. But anyways,
No,
Beamer against Jimbo.
Let me stop you right now.
Yeah.
And let me all of I haven't even checked the chat, and I'm not going to because I'm assuming it's upset. But like, let me reel all of you back in. A&M, you have a much better chance of beating Texas A&M than you did Missouri. A much better chance of beating Texas A&M than you did Missouri. Missouri's a really good football team. Like, the environment on the road is not as difficult, but you're going to an 11 a.m. kick in College Station. 85,000 boys named Bryce and Jace, arm in arm, swaying back and forth, singing fucking summertime country like camp songs. Like, get the fuck out of here. This is a rivalry game where you had rivalry game. It's a trophy game, which is still hilarious to me. This game, you have a much better chance of winning. And I think if there's a game you talk about rallying the troops or stupid shit that could happen to where South Carolina can pull out a victory, it's this one. So I don't think this is a must-champ era type loss that you're walking into. I know what I said earlier and about how on paper it's terrifying to think the fact that A&M leads the country in sacks and South Carolina seemingly leads the country in sacks allowed. That being said, Spencer Rattler on the road hasn't been the best. Go out there and this is the go back. I'm gonna get all fired up. Go back a year ago. Did you think you had a chance against South Carolina or against Tennessee? No. Did you think you really had a chance against Clemson? Let me rephrase that. Did you think you had a chance against Clemson before you beat Tennessee? No. So going into this game with the mindset of oh, we have no chance. Good, because you didn't think you did last year when you had the best chance to win. Did you think you had a chance to go on the road and beat Georgia in 2019? Because I didn't. You were 4-8. And you fucking beat them. Go in there and shock the world. Do what Beamer and South Carolina tends to do in this situation, and that is linger and stick around, and then all of a sudden it's in the fourth quarter, and you want to talk about somebody getting fucking tight in the fourth quarter games. Jimbo Fisher with his job on the line, because Beamer doesn't have his job on the line right now, regardless of all the ire from the fans. So go win a fucking ball game, that kind of stuff. This is a perfect spot for South Carolina. And I swear to God, if that's the clip you show and I look remotely fat, I'm going to punch you in the mouth next time I see you.
Well, to your point, Chris, this definitely feels like a spot that, I think it's fair to say if Texas A&M loses, that's it for Jimbo. He's done. He's done. He's cooked. He's finished. No matter the buyout be damned. Jimbo Fisher is gone. So I think it's a fascinating matchup. Shane Beamer, he needs it, but not in the way Jimbo needs it. Not even remotely close. Looking at the rest of the Week 9 slate, Chris, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. No Brock Bowers for Georgia. Dogs are a 2-touchdown favorite in this one. Does Florida stand a shot at the upset because of no Brock Bowers? Do you think they can keep up some of that offensive momentum they generated against the Gamecocks, or would you expect Georgia to roll in this one?
I hope Florida wins. I don't care how that sounds. It is what's today? October 26th or 25th?
25th.
October 25th. And Georgia and Michigan are the top 2 teams in the country. You want to take a guess at what their strength of schedule is for both teams?
Not very high.
109th and 110th. It is almost the end of October, and those 2 teams, it's a fucking joke.
They ain't played nobody, Paul.
They haven't played anybody. Bama, by the way, who never plays anybody, is sitting there at 7. Just throwing that out there. But there's a bunch of everyone else. It's the last in the SEC for Georgia. I'm not going to get into it, but I do think there's a chance. I do think there's a chance for Florida. I think if enough stupid stuff happens in this game, which can tend to happen in rivalry games, that I think Georgia could lose. The thing that scares me is there's not a coach in the country that hates another team more than Kirby Smart hates Florida. And you can see it in all the gifts and the F these mother blankers and all that kind of stuff. Like, he hates Florida. I think that when the lights have shined brightest over the past couple of years, it's when Georgia has kind of played their best, especially over the last year and a half or so. Now, last team to get them in the regular season was Florida. That's a much different team. I think Napier and company will come out like they're going to play good defense. And I think if you're Florida, the best thing you can do is like it's somewhat what I said about South Carolina is just linger around, because we haven't seen Georgia outside the Kentucky game piece together a 60-minute football game once this season. And I don't know if they do it this week in Jacksonville. This sounds stupid because it feels like I'm covering all my bases, but there's only two outcomes I can see happening. And that is enough stupid crap happens where there's like a blocked punt or a fumbled punt or, some weird turnovers, like they have 3 turnovers and Florida somehow returns one of them for a touchdown and they are able to win that way, or Georgia blows them out. And if it's between those two, I'm leaning more towards Georgia blows them out just because Carson Beck has been a lot better than people realize. And that offense is way more than Brock Bowers, so we'll see.
Yeah, Chris, I got a feeling that the South Carolina defense has tricked us into thinking Florida some offensive juggernaut when they are really not.
Yes.
Finally, Chris, game I'm really excited about. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. Kentucky, Tennessee, and Lexington Cats are a 3.5-point underdog. Tennessee coming off the loss to Alabama. Joe Milton on the road. A pretty good Kentucky defense. I think the big question this one is just, can Devin Leary find something off of the bye week? Liam Cohen. The running game's going to be there with Ray Davis. You got the weapons on the outside, but Devin Leary's just been awful. Probably one of the more underwhelming players. Yeah, awful. But he's been, of all the guys that came in the season like with expectations, he's probably been the most underwhelming of them all. So when you look at this game, what do you like? What do you not like? Do you lean a certain way? I mean, I feel like this is one of those true just coin flip ball games in the SEC.
You think it's a coin flip?
I mean, night game at Kentucky. I mean,
I want you, when we get off this show, I want you and everyone else in the comments to go see how much money you have in your bank account. I don't want you to tell me what it is, okay? Because I don't want to feel put to shame, because I know it's way more than me. I want all of you to go check your bank account, and I want you to take out however much you have that you can still pay rent next month, because I know the first is coming up, okay? Right. Take out the rest of it. Or fuck, man, just take all of it out and put it on Tennessee. Put it on Tennessee money line, or put it on Tennessee to cover 3.5. I would say the money line if you're going big. Tennessee is going to smoke Kentucky. This is like hands down the lock of the week. I did this little deep dive last night. First off, Kentucky's not good. Kentucky's not a good football team. Said it a year ago. People got upset with me. They ranked 7th in the country for some fucking reason in the month of September. They're not a good football team. They don't do things consistently well. They had a 14-0 lead on Mizzou. Then they let a punter ruin their entire rest of the day. They're not a good football team. Tennessee coming off a loss under Josh Heupel, they're 7-1. They have averaged winning those 7 games by an average of 38.3 points per game. They've averaged scoring 51.8 points per game in the 8 games they've had following a loss. And I saw somebody push back on this today because it's like, well, yeah, those games were against Vandy and Mizzou, and well, you know what? That's Kentucky. Mizzou is obviously better than Kentucky. Kentucky's not a great team. Tennessee will smoke Kentucky this weekend. They will absolutely destroy Kentucky.
Well said, Chris. Hey, you swayed me. That's all I know. You swayed me. Chris, one final thing before I get you out of here. Yeah. Sam Pittman obviously fired Dan Enos, a move that I think was necessary, kind of using him as the scapegoat, obviously. My bigger question is this. Right. He is the scapegoat. My bigger question is this. Do you think Sam Pittman makes it to next season as Arkansas's head coach?
I do. And let me take the time, since you've asked me this question, to tell Dan Enos, because I know he's a fan of the show and I know he's listening right now. This is what happens when you have karma come back to bite you in the fucking ass. Because when you come home from California after you lose a national championship game, ready to be promoted as the offensive coordinator at Alabama under Nick Saban, and then you pack up your entire office in the middle of the night and then don't tell anybody and just don't show up for the meeting the next morning, that's about as cowardly as you can fucking get. And I hope Enos, I hope nothing but pain travels with him at every stop he has the rest of the year, or the rest of his career. So there you go.
It's good to know, Chris, that bad things still happen to bad people, unless you're Will Muschamp, and then everything good happens to you for whatever reason. So,
True.
I don't know. Chris Marler, Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored. Chris, always great stuff, man. I appreciate it.
See y'all.
There we go. See you, man. That was the cue to get Chris off. Again, we always appreciate Chris Marler taking the time. Really good stuff. Hard hitting as always. A packed slate, guys, of SEC games upcoming. And like he mentioned, Tennessee, Kentucky, hammer the Vols. They are the lock of the week. We'll see if he did enough to sway me on that pick. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Wednesday, October the 25th. All that and more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. I want to say thank you yet again to our good friend Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, Saturday Football Uncensored, for taking the time to chat. Always a pleasure to kick off our Wednesday shows with conversations with him. Again, guys, I see you all commenting in the chat. Thank you all so much for engaging with the show. Really great stuff. As always look forward to getting to your questions, comments, and voicemails in our daily mailbag segment. You can tell a little short of breath. I just sprinted to make sure I could get a bathroom break in before we got back from break. About a minute and a half left. I was like, wait a minute. Got something to do. So sprinted back up the stairs to get back in the studio, get behind the mic for you all. So I do apologize if I sound a little bit short of breath. Either way, guys, really excited for this weekend's game, guys. A game in which, it's big for both sides. Jimbo Fisher, Shane Beamer. We're talking about that and really starting to dive into the weeds and break this thing down. Of course, as you all know, every single Wednesday, we do our position unit comparison. And I think the question, guys, is this. When you look at this football game, does South Carolina realistically, when you factor in injuries, when you factor in the obvious deficiencies, do they have the roster to compete? Not even just pull the upset, but compete with Texas A&M. Because a football team that, while they've underachieved, they've got a lot of talent. It's a coaching issue. It's not a talent issue. That's why they want Jimbo gone so badly. So we look at that, guys, in our position unit comparison. If the Gamecocks have any advantages, where do they have them? We will start at the quarterback position and give Texas A&M credit, right? It's an unfortunate situation for the Aggies with the injury to Connor Wegman earlier in this season. Wegman was having a fantastic season when he went down. And, of course, Max Johnson takes over. Guys, Wegman was throwing for 69% completion percentage, 979 yards when he went out, 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He was really, really good for Texas A&M up to the point of his injury. Max Johnson has filled in nicely. Of course, this is a guy who's a savvy veteran, transferred in from LSU. I think it was, 2 years ago, something like that. 57% completion percentage, 898 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, so a little bit high on the picks. He's also been sacked 10 times, not very mobile. I think Max Johnson's done enough. He hasn't been great, but he's done enough for them to operate, I think, much more of a game manager. I can't get the visual out of my head when I watch Max Johnson play, kind of just the loopy throws he makes. And he feels like more of an old school quarterback, right? He's not one of these new age dynamic guys. He just does what his team needs him to do. He's the distributor of the football, facilitator, if you will, and has done good work for them. Of course, on the South Carolina side, guys, there's Spencer Rattler. And this one easily, guys, the Gamecocks have the advantage at quarterback. If they have any advantage in this game, it is under center. I continue, even on the road, by the way, even on the road, I say South Carolina has the advantage here. And I know that road Spencer Rattler has been a different player. And let's give credit to this, by the way, the competition they faced on the road, and also the difficulties in going into SEC venues, going into road venues, and playing well. That being said, even with road Rattler, who, guys, I don't think he was terrible last year. And I know many fans, they want to pin it on Rattler. Well, a lot of those sacks are his fault. He's running backwards, what have you. I understand that. He's not totally, he's not totally immune from blame or accountability or what have you for his role in the sacks. But you look at even last week, I mean, this kid is doing everything he can to give this football team a chance. And when he does get time, and when he's at his best, He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, something I cannot say for Max Johnson. So Max Johnson, respectable football player, great facilitator of the football, but Spencer Rattler's a guy, if he gets any semblance of time, he's a game changer. And he's a guy that can go out and win you a football game. He's a guy that can go out and lead an upset like this one against the Aggies. So South Carolina gets the nod at the quarterback position. At running back, I give the nod to Texas A&M. I mean, you look at South Carolina, Mario Anderson's been a nice answer in the running back room for the Gamecocks. Outside of that, guys, it's a major question mark, right? Juju McDowell, DeCarrion Joyner, what do you really have there? Obviously, Dontavius Braswell has not even played. And I thought Mario Anderson, against a really salty Mizzou front, he looked much more human than we've seen the last couple of weeks, right? Was really good against Florida. Tennessee went over 100 yards. Was able to stack up some yards late. I think they may have went away from the running game a little bit sooner than they should have. But you saw, for the most part, Mario Anderson get bottled up. And obviously, guys, the running game, it's one of the worst, if not the worst, in the SEC. Texas A&M doesn't run it particularly well. I mean, they're not great. But they do have some fantastic players back there, some talented players. And, guys, that's going to be a theme. A&M's got talent everywhere. They may be dysfunctional as a football team. They may have a dysfunctional head coach, but they've got plenty of talent. Le'Veon Moss leads the way at the running back position, 77 carries, 387 yards. He's averaging 5 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns, guys. They also have, for his 1-2 punch, Amari Daniels, 53 carries, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5.4 yards per carry. So it's still not, and also Owens, 37 carries, 130, 3.5 yards per carry and a touchdown. So they go a legitimate 2 or 3 deep, where I think South Carolina, you're looking at Mario Anderson and, guys, literally your next best rushing threat. I think it's Spencer Rattler making up things, getting outside of the pocket, scrambling for his dear life, and getting something positive out of plays. So, South Carolina, we all know it's a position they've got to hit in the transfer portal this offseason, and I easily give Texas A&M the nod at the running back position. We moved to wide receiver, guys, and if this was a couple of weeks ago, or you were asking me in the preseason, I probably would have said, oh, yeah, Gamecocks get the nod, or at worst, it's a push. But when you factor in, of course, we know no Juice Wells, which is not a surprise. Xavier Legette is questionable, which means he most likely will not play. That's how Shane Beamer injury reports, unfortunately, work at this point. And then outside of Legette, guys, who has really stepped up? I mean, we hope to see more Nick Harbor, but I mean, you can't say he's a big-time threat or ready to take over as the number one guy. Omega Blake, Eddie Lewis, it sounds like Amarian Brown is questionable and may not play. Who else? Luke Doty? I mean, who else is there really that can step up and be an impact guy on the outside? You then look at Texas A&M. Aniyah Smith and Evan Stewart, 2 of the best big play threats in the SEC. Smith leading the way, 27 catches, 451 yards, 16.7 yards per catch. Somehow, some way, he does not have a touchdown this year, which is really astonishing. Evan Stewart, 31 for 451, 14.5 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. And then Noah Thomas for them has really emerged this season as a big play threat. The sophomore, 6'6", 200. He's going to be tough to guard at the wide receiver position, by the way. 14 for 193, 13.8 yards per catch. But he's got 4 touchdowns. So 4 of his 14 catches have gone for touchdowns this season. And, guys, they go even deeper than that when you look down the list. So Texas A&M, they've got real big-time talent in that wide receiver room, guys. Like I mentioned, even in the preseason, even with Juice and Legette healthy, I probably would have called this a push. But certainly with the injuries, what you're dealing with, and the dynamic duo that is Aniyah Smith, Evan Stewart, and then Noah Thomas stepping up as well, Texas A&M gets the nod at the wide receiver position. We move to tight ends. And the tight end position is one Texas A&M does not use a ton. I do give the nod to the Gamecocks here, guys. Trey Knox and Joshua Simon, Trey Knox especially, has really come into his own as a weapon for Spencer Rattler. You also factor in, of course, his SEC experience before South Carolina. This is a savvy veteran at tight end. He knows what he's doing. He's a big play threat for the Gamecocks, at least in regards to when you account for what you have at the tight end position. You look at what A&M has as well. their leading tight end is Jake Johnson, I believe is his name. Yep, Jake Johnson, the sophomore, 6'6", 240. Actually out of Athens, Georgia. This was a big pickup for them, I recall, when they got him in recruiting. But 18 catches, 167 yards, 9.3 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns for him. Outside of that, they've got Wright, the next highest leading tight end, 8 for 92, 11.5, and no touchdown. So I do think South Carolina, I think they get the nod. I think they have the advantage at the tight end position. I like what Trey Knox has given you of late. I think Joshua Simon is still a player they need to find ways to get more involved. But I do like South Carolina at the tight end position in this ball game. We move guys to offensive line. Texas A&M has the advantage. I don't even feel like I need to explain this one. Like, I feel like I'm wasting my breath to a degree explaining why. Because, guys, there's not an offensive line in college ball. I mean, I think if you could stack up, if we could do a list of the worst offensive lines in college football, if we could rank the offensive lines 1 through 131, I think is the worst, South Carolina's would be like the bottom 10, truly. And when you look in the SEC, maybe Vandy has a worse offensive line, but I'm not sure I'd even go that far. So it doesn't even matter to a degree what Texas A&M has. The Gamecocks are worse off when it comes to their offensive line. But they've done a much better job, obviously, guys, protecting the quarterback. I mean, again, I think they've only given up 13 sacks all season. They're not a juggernaut when it comes to running the football, right? 131.9 yards per game. They have 9 rushing touchdowns on the season. But again, guys, you look at South Carolina, Gamecocks are dead last in the conference, I believe, in rushing offense. They're dead last in sacks allowed. They're one of the worst in college football in that statistic. And then you factor in the injuries, guys. I mean, we don't have any clue who's going to be playing on the offensive line for South Carolina. Like, I feel like this is a situation in which you travel to College Station, you wake up Saturday, you go to the offensive line, you look around and you say, okay, do we have 5 players who are healthy? Okay, you 5 are starting. Like, that's unfortunately the position you are in right now. So it goes without saying Texas A&M has the advantage at offensive line. And I mean, guys, you look at the rest of the slate. I don't know, guys. I mean, does South Carolina have a better offensive line than Jacksonville State? Do they have a better O-line than Vandy? I mean, I'm not trying to spoil those, give you guys the way too far look ahead or what have you. But I mean, the current state this offensive line is in, it's bleak, guys. The reality is bleak. That is it. And Texas A&M, they've recruited well there. They've got big uglies in the trenches. They've got talent in regards to those big uglies. Offensive line, they certainly have it there as well. Speaking of the big uglies, we flip sides of the football. We go to the defensive side, the defensive line for Texas A&M. Aggies easily get the nod here. Again, guys, Texas A&M's a bit of a mess, but it's not because of lack of talent. Because you look up front for them guys, Walter Nolan leads the way. He is absolutely fantastic. One of the most disruptive defensive linemen in the SEC. You look down the list for Texas A&M, and guys, they are tied for first nationally in regards to getting after the quarterback. 29 team sacks by this Texas A&M defensive line. They've got athleticism, they've got size, they've got speed, right? It's led by Walter Nolan, who actually leads this football team in sacks when it comes to defensive linemen. Their linebacker, Edrin Cooper, leads the entire team with 6 sacks. Walter Nolan in the middle with 4 sacks. Shamar Turner is their second highest in regards to defensive linemen with 3.5 sacks. Jackson has 3 sacks. Diggs has 3 sacks. These are all defensive linemen, right? They've got all SEC caliber NFL bodies across their front 7. I mean, all across the front 7. Meanwhile, who do the Gamecocks have? Tonka Hemingway? TJ Sanders has been a decent player. The Gamecocks are lacking at edge. They're lacking at real competitive depth in the interior. And so while you may want to hang your hat on what TJ Sanders has done or Tonka Hemingway has done, it doesn't even remotely compare to what Texas A&M has in their front 7 and specifically their defensive front. Again, guys, like I mentioned, they are tied for first nationally in regards to sacks, and a ton of those have come from their defensive front. It's not just linebackers and DBs blitzing or what have you. Like, they can get there with 4. They can probably get there with 3 against South Carolina. I would expect them to do that this weekend. We move to the linebacker position. Guys, Texas A&M gets the nod here. It's a sad state of affairs when you look at South Carolina defensively and say, what are they good at? They're bad at all 3 levels. That's just where you are, though. Texas A&M gets the nod. Again, like I mentioned, guys, they're led by Edrin Cooper, 45 total tackles, 6 sacks on the season. He has been absolutely fantastic for the Aggies. You then look Russell Jr., another one, 17 total tackles. Guys, you're going to notice their tackle totals are not extremely high, right? Chris Russell Jr. is one of their top guys at linebacker. Why does he only have 17 tackles? Well, it's because, guys, they've got defensive linemen that are getting those stops before the linebackers get there. That's something we're not accustomed to as Gamecock fans. It's a foreign thing to us. That you mean the defensive front is getting there before the secondary? The safeties aren't leading this team in tackling, guys. These are your leading tacklers on Texas A&M's defense. Okay, I'm gonna go down the list by what position they play. Linebacker, D-line, 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 linebacker, D-line, D-line, line. Excuse me. Actually, I'm incorrect. I'm looking at sack numbers. Okay, here we go. Linebacker, defensive back, D lineman, defensive back, D lineman, defensive back, D lineman, linebacker, defensive back. So what you're noticing is, though, the top 3 or 4 or 5 tacklers, they're not all just DBs. Their defensive linemen actually get there, right? So, Edrin Cooper at the linebacker position. Russell Jr. has been good for them as well. This York kid, he's been awesome as well. Torian York, a true freshman, 6 foot, 230 pounds, 41 total tackles, 7 sacks for him on this season. And South Carolina, guys, I mean, it's just, let's call it for what it is. Debo Williams, the linebacker position's an efficiency at South Carolina yet again. For as much heart and wit and smarts as Debo Williams has, the guy is a missing tackles machine. I mean, the guy is just every single week, there's some highlight of him making some sort of blunder. Whether it be a running back running through the hole and he misses him, whether it be having a shot at the quarterback, he flat out misses him. Stone Blanton can't play in coverage to save his life. And then, guys, Grayson Pup Howard, he's a true freshman. Also, he kind of looked slow out there last week, I have to admit, but he's a true freshman. Jerron Willis is a non-factor. Bam Martin Scott's a non-factor. Texas A&M easily with the advantage at the linebacker position. Defensive back, same thing. You have to give the nod to Texas A&M, guys. You have to give the nod to Texas A&M. They returned a wealth of experience this year. Tyreek Chappell, Damani Richardson, Jordan Gilbert. They added Tony Grimes for the transfer portal from North Carolina. Josh DeBerry leads their team in interceptions with 2 picks on the season, 31 tackles to his credit as well, and a sack. Guys, again, this is a Texas A&M team loaded across the board with big-time NFL talent. And you look at South Carolina, who, showed some life last week, right? Against Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, and did a decent job holding their own and not completely getting gashed on the big play down the field. But it's because they sold out on the pass, and Mizzou's able to just run the football down their throat. So South Carolina secondary, still one of the worst in college football. Certainly, I think the worst in the SEC. They've still got major issues. I give Texas A&M the easy nod yet again at the defensive back spot. We move to punter and kicker. And guys, this was one I was very close on. I was very, very close to labeling this a push. I know many of you reached out to me and said, Chris, Kai Kroger, he's been terrible this year. What's going on? And Texas A&M, guys, they have not been great on special teams this year, but they've got an all-SEC punter, if you did not realize, in Nick Constantinow. I'm probably messing up his name, but he is 2-time all-SEC. 2-time all-SEC backup punter for them. Randy Bond is at kicker. Okay, Randy Bond at kicker. He's been somewhat inconsistent in the field goal game. 15 for 21, just 71%, guys. He's 2 for 7 from 40 to 49 yards. So not super long. He's 2 for 3 from 50 plus, which is really the crazy part, but 2 for 7 from 40 to 49. So he has not been great. I'm going to give the nod to South Carolina here, but barely, because I'm going to give it because I feel for Kai Kroger, because Kai Kroger, it's not like he's been terrible, guys. It's just that he hasn't been Superman like he was last year. That's the biggest difference. He just has not been superhuman. He hasn't been god-awful. He just has not been superhuman, which is what Gamecock Nation expected him to be. Also, Mitch Jeter, obviously, guys, much more efficient, coming off a game in which he went 4 for 5 on field goals. I think certainly the Gamecocks have the advantage there. So I'd probably call it a push between the punters. I'd call it South Carolina has the advantage at kicker. Therefore, I do give the Gamecocks the nod when it comes to kickers and punters going in this ball game. And guys, finally, coaching. I give Texas A&M the nod here. I know there's a lot of question marks about Jimbo Fisher, and he might be on his last end. Guys, if he loses to South Carolina, he's done. Buyout be damned. If Texas A&M loses to South Carolina, Jimbo Fisher is finished. Kaput. History. See you later. That being said, when you look across Texas A&M's coaching staff, number one, even if we were just doing head coaches, Jimbo Fisher has a national championship. There are not many coaches active who have that to their name. The buck stops there. But if you want to keep going, guys, Bobby Petrino versus Dabble Loggins, I'm giving the nod to Bobby Petrino. DJ Durkin versus Clayton White, I don't care who it is. I ain't giving Clayton White the nod against anybody. Like, you go down the list of, they've got Steve Adazio on their staff. Like, Jimbo Fisher assembled an all-star coaching staff. That's what makes it so maddening, right? That Texas A&M isn't getting the job done, right? It feels like they have all the pieces in place, and for whatever reason, it just feels like it's somewhat of a dysfunctional mess at times. That being said, guys, is Shane Beamer as poor of a head coach as folks right now may want to make him out to be? I don't think he is. I think there's still a lot of optimism, reasons to be optimistic when it comes to the Shane Beamer era and what he can do at South Carolina. But he's a head coach learning on the go in his third year. And the simple fact is, guys, we don't know. We don't know what Shane Beamer is going to turn into. And while I understand Jimbo Fisher has not been great at Texas A&M, Shane Beamer beat Jimbo last year. Guys, you still look at it as this is a national championship head coach going up against a guy who's learning on the job. And then you look at the rest of the coaching staff and the assistants, and it's an all-star lineup. And South Carolina, I think the jury is still out on Dabble Loggins, although he's done a good job this year, especially with Spencer Rattler. Clayton White's a bum. He needs to be fired. Pete Limbo's good, but I'm kind of, how much of a nod do you really want me to give you for winning the special teams category every week? Like, who really gives a damn? So, without a doubt, guys, Texas A&M across the board, not just their head coach, the better coaching staff. So, at the top of the segment, we asked the question, does South Carolina have the roster to not even just pull the upset, but to compete in this ballgame? Per the position unit comparison and per what we see on paper, the answer, unfortunately, is a resounding no. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into another break. On the other side, we're going to do our weekly drive around the SEC game previews, and I'll lock in my predictions for all of the SEC games this weekend. All that and more, guys, on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. Quick update for TDC going into the later parts of the week, guys. As you all know, of course, on Saturday, we've got our watch party at Carolina Cigars in Hilton Head Island. Really looking forward to that. We'll actually embark for Hilton Head after today's show. With that being said, we're going to be busy while on the island. So tomorrow and Friday, TDC will be getting bumped up. Morning TDC, the Crow and Coffee, I don't know, whatever y'all want to call it, We're moving TDC up from instead of noon to 2, it'll be 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern time. 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern time, both tomorrow and Friday. Really looking forward to guys getting it in, knocking it out. Of course, guys, like I said, we got things going on. We're playing golf with the Carolina Cigar Boys. We're going to have a good time down there on the island. But 9 to 11 tomorrow and Friday is when you can catch us. And like I said, guys, we've got content bleeding out of the eyeballs for the rest of the week, from guests to our predictions, everything else. Going to be a lot of fun. So 9 to 11 tomorrow, Friday. Make sure you tune in for some early TDC. Guys, continue to leave us your questions, your comments, and your voicemails. We got our daily mailbag segment upcoming at about 1:30 or so. In the meantime, we're talking SEC football going into week 9. Our drive around the SEC, guys, as we look at all of the action. Again, guys, we're changing this up a little bit. Normally what I was doing, we do the drive around the SEC where I just kind of look at the games, give my brief thoughts, what have you. And I was separating the predictions and saving those for the Thursday show in our SEC Pick'em. I realized that was a little bit unnecessary. So we're actually going to combine those two things now. The drive around the SEC is going to be my brief thoughts, my brief opinions, and game predictions for each and every single SEC game. So without further ado, drive around the SEC week 9. Let us begin with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Florida taking on Georgia in Jacksonville. And Georgia, the big storyline in this one, beginning life after Brock Bowers. What does this UGA offense look like without, I would say, their best player? How is Mike Bobo able to combat that? Is Carson Beck able to find another weapon? Does somebody else step up? Does Oscar Delp at the tight end position, somebody at the wide receiver spot? Can Georgia lean more on their running game? And this is a Dogs football team, guys. They've escaped death early on in this season. So you wonder now against a Florida team that, I don't think the South Carolina game should trick us into thinking Florida's a bunch of world beaters. But you have a successful offensive outing in Columbia. You go into a bye week. You build off of that. You have that confidence. In a game that's a 14.5-point spread, I mean, who knows, guys? I'll tell you this. If Georgia has one of those games like they had against Auburn and they kind of sleepwalk through it, and this may be the one where it finally bites them in the rear end. This may be the one where it finally comes up to haunt them. I'm going to go with Georgia here. I don't know if they cover, guys. I don't know if they cover. I'm going to go with Georgia. I think the South Carolina game was somewhat fool's gold when it comes to the Florida offense. I don't think that's who they really are. I don't think, obviously, that's who Graham Mertz really is. But I will not be stunned at all if this is a really, really tight ball game going into the fourth quarter and Florida gives Georgia a lot of headaches. But I'm going to lock in Georgia as my pick. But should be a lot of fun, guys. I'm as intrigued to watch the world's largest outdoor cocktail party as I've ever been. We'll put it that way. So going to be a lot of fun to see. Guys, we move to the Plains. Auburn taking on Mississippi State. This one a 3:30 kick on SEC Network. Auburn coming off of that really tough defeat at the hands of Ole Miss. Meanwhile, Mississippi State, how about this? They're coming off a win, beating the Arkansas Razorbacks on the road. This one's interesting. This one's really, really interesting because, you look at Mississippi State. I mean, they've got talent, right? I mean, what is the status of Will Rogers? Do we know if he's going to play? I don't think we know right now. So it sounds like it might be Mike Wright yet again, which, I think gives them somewhat of a dynamic wrinkle on the offensive side because of his legs. But you obviously saw last weekend, he's not an elite passer of the football, and that was against, an Arkansas defense that isn't all that great. Let's be totally honest. Meanwhile, from Auburn, what do they get from their offense? I mean, this might be another game, guys, that sets offensive football back 100 years. I think Auburn on the home field, I like the Tigers to protect Jordan Hare to get this W. I think this is one Hugh Freeze absolutely needs to have. I think he will get it. I think this is a fun back-and-forth ball game, low-scoring game, close game. I think Auburn barely ekes this one out. Kentucky taking on Tennessee, a 7 o'clock kick on ESPN in Lexington, Kentucky. And guys, admittedly, this is a game in which I was taking Kentucky straight up. I was. And then I heard what Chris Marler had to say. And I think I've been swayed, which is unfortunate. It means I have to make a change to my gambling picks because I actually took Kentucky plus 3.5. Based off what I heard from Chris Marler, how good Tennessee is coming off of losses, how good they are offensively. And I will say to his point, Kentucky is a football team. They feel somewhat fraudulent. They feel somewhat fraudulent. And for Tennessee, this is a game that is the difference between a potentially pretty good season at 9-3 and a below average season for what Tennessee had for their expectations, if you will. I was going Kentucky straight up as of an hour and a half ago. After my conversation with Chris Marler, he has officially swayed me. I am changing my pick. I am able to do that. I am capable of doing so. I'm going to go with Tennessee. I'm going to go with Tennessee here. I got to change my bet as well because I don't think they'll just win by 3. I think Tennessee, Joe Milton, that front 7, I don't trust Devin Leary in this football game. I can't trust Devin Leary until I see more out of him. I tell you this, though. If Kentucky's going to respond, if Kentucky is going to respond, it's going to be this game. Like, if Devin Leary has any shot of being the guy that we thought he could be, it's got to come this week. If not, I think he just is what he is, which is most likely. But I'm going to take Tennessee. I had Kentucky before. I'm going to go Tennessee. They're going to cover the 3.5. They're going to get the big W. And I swear to God, if I change my pick because of Chris Marler and I get it wrong, I'm never going to forgive him. Finally, guys, Ole Miss taking on Vanderbilt. This is a 7:30 kick in Oxford on the SEC Network. And, guys, this one, you look at the spread, Ole Miss minus 25.5. Vandy's not very good. Vanderbilt, though, has found ways, for whatever reason, to give Ole Miss headaches. Like, whatever the reason is, they've given Ole Miss headaches. And I don't really understand why. I don't get it. Maybe Ole Miss just, sleepwalks when they see Vandy. They don't take them seriously. I don't know, but I think Ole Miss wins this football game. I think Vanderbilt, guys, is just not a very good football team. Ken Seals, decent at the quarterback spot. They've still got, of course, Will Shepard and a couple of other weapons, but just not a good football team. Ole Miss is a team, I think, rolling right now, home game at night. I think you're going to see Quinshawn Judkins, Jackson Dart, the offense continue to be electric. And I think Ole Miss, I don't know if they cover 25.5, guys, because, again, Clark Lee, Vanderbilt Commodores, for some reason they play them tight. But I don't think this game's ever really all that close. I think Ole Miss puts it in cruise control. They're able to get a nice win, continue their positive momentum. Give me Ole Miss to take down the Vanderbilt Commodores in Oxford. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll get into our daily mailbag. I want to hear from you, your questions, your comments, your voicemails, all of the commentary from you guys. The beauty is certainly in the banter. And it's time for banter and discussion here on a Wednesday. Guys, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. And as I see some of you mentioning in the chat, yes, it is flannel season. Switch it up today with the flannel. Wanted to keep you guys on your toes. Either way, guys, the daily mailbag segment officially begins. We're taking your questions, your comments, and your voicemails, 843-790-3377. You can call that number, text that number, whatever you like. Like I mentioned, you can also comment on YouTube and or Facebook, or you can go to the Big Cock Club Discord. Go to the Big Cock Club Discord and comment there. Brennan M. is trying to say that Alabama's offensive line is worse than South Carolina's. I don't know what you're smoking, but I need some of it because, my friend, you have never been more wrong in your entire life. I know what the numbers say. Bama's giving up more sacks. How about the rushing numbers, too? You want to factor those in also? Come on, bro. I mean, listen, slap dick's going to slap dick. You can't fix a broken slap dick. So, Brennan M., that's the case. Broken slap dick alert. Broken slap dick alert. All right, let's get into your questions here. Ethan says, how's the most loyal and passionate fans in sports doing? hanging on for dear life. Jacob says, why'd they cut you off of the Aggie show? So they texted me. They had a commercial break running up right at that 11 o'clock hour, that hour that we were running up on. And so that was probably some of my fault. I didn't realize the segment was going to end that quickly. But they texted me, apologize. It's all good, guys. A little bit of miscommunication, I think. But either way, we're good. We're good. Had a great time on TexAgs. It was a lot of fun for sure. Panic Ritter. Beamer needs to fire Clayton White now. Beamer needs to fire Clayton White now, he says. Panic Ritter also says he can practice better than Beamer, which God bless you. Justin, A&M is going to be us like a redheaded stepchild. John Edward says, how are you going to juggle football and basketball content on TDC? John Edward, like we always have, we will, dedicate content to basketball when it calls for it. And, admittedly, John Edward, I'm going to tell you this, and we'll go ahead and tackle this head on. Admittedly, a lot of my content in regards to basketball, like we're going to talk basketball for sure. Probably next week, we're going to do our basketball season preview show. We'll break down men's, women's, what have you. But I also want to break down the entire SEC and do an SEC basketball preview show. John Edward, it's just going to be honestly the goal of this show. And I mentioned this before. I mentioned this months ago, right? The goal and the objective of this show is not solely, okay, like we have to cover every South Carolina game and if basketball is no good and we're still in the midst of football season, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking basketball. I just the only people at this point, guys, that follow men's South Carolina basketball are like the diehards of the diehards, like the most diehard. That's it. It's not a large portion of people. And then same thing with women's basketball. Like it's so niche that unless you're a fam or you're a diehard super diehard South Carolina fan, you don't care about women's basketball. Like that's a fun topic to discuss. I don't know why that even bothers people. I don't know why that's a problem. Like to say that, there's a great deal of support, like the FAMs, which I think we could all agree, and this could take us down a different path of what's interesting is like when you break up the South Carolina fan base, you have your Gamecock fans that are diehards that follow every single sport because there's a block C on it. You've got people that only follow football. And I know this guy's based off looking at the numbers. Our numbers double during football season. Well, why is that? It's because there are some people that really, they only tune in for football. Like they don't care about basketball. They don't care about baseball. They're only football. Then you got some people that are baseball people like myself. So they're going to watch football, follow along, but they also really love baseball. They're going to be invested in baseball, but baseball isn't for everybody. And then you got your basketball people, and same, just like I just said, baseball's not for everyone. Women's basketball is not for everyone, guys. But then you've got the FAMs. The FAMs, that big sector, the FAMs, I'm almost positive it's this group of people that they're only fans of women's basketball. Like, they don't really show up for football season or any other sport. They are just South Carolina women's basketball fans. And that's great, by the way. That's awesome. That's awesome. Like, support the way you want to support. Fan how you want to fan. I'm not going to tell you how. But realistically, I know this is a Gamecock show. I totally get that. But realistically, South Carolina fans love women's basketball because they win, and they win big. But it's still like a very, very niche portion of the fan base that follows women's basketball. Like, I haven't built my business off of the back of covering women's basketball. I just haven't. So we're going to cover basketball. We're going to preview the women. We're going to acknowledge the women. We're going to talk. I mean, listen, we talk about the storylines with them when they move the needle, just like we talk all the other sports. But I say all that to say, like, I'm not going to promise you that we're going to cover basketball, especially while football is going on, quite as in depth. My goal every day on the Daily Crow is to bring you guys the hardest hitting topics. And we have some things during football season that are, staples because, we preview the game, we break down the games, we give predictions, all that good stuff. But I'm not going to force college basketball content into the show if the men's team stinks, first off, and just to do it, second off. Like, if South Carolina goes out there, the women's team, they go out there and they beat a team by 60 points, what is there for us to talk about? Like what do we need to talk about? Like, there's not a whole lot to discuss there. And I mean, guys, again, the interest level, it's for the most part, it's not there. It's not there for women's basketball. There's no businesses out there built off of that. So, again, I just went on a long tangent there to say, John Edward, we're going to cover it just like we always have. I mean, we've always talked both, but I mean, when we're in the midst of football season, John Edward, obviously football season takes precedent over what's going on the court. That's just the way it is. And that's basically every single SEC school outside of Kentucky. Really, truly. Let's see. Ethan K. The harsh reality is most people don't care about any other sport than football. Ethan, that's the majority. I mean, you're absolutely right. That's the majority. Most people don't. Most people are football, and then everything else is kind of just there, which is fine. I mean, I get it. Football is king. It always has been. It always will be. You know, I used to get frustrated. Like, why do people not care about baseball more? Like, come on, it's baseball season. But, like, not everybody likes baseball. Like, admittedly, guys, I'm not a huge basketball guy. Truly. I'm not a huge basketball guy. I'm not, like, I follow it and cover it and talk about it because I'm a Gamecocks fan and because I have a business around the Gamecocks. But, guys, I've said this before, and I'll say it yet again. Admittedly, I mean, before my business, I'd maybe watch 3 or 4 games a season. Like, it did not bother me in the slightest to miss a Gamecocks basketball game. It just didn't. It just didn't. So, Mad Dog says, women then men's basketball. They have earned that. It's fun to follow Dawn and her chance. Well, Madison, to your point, I mean, you're a diehard, but I think you'd be stunned. Maybe y'all wouldn't believe me. But this is just coming from my perspective. There's still more interest in men's basketball at South Carolina than women's. There is. I understand the crowds at CLA. I'm just saying that if we could measure engagement rate and attention rate, men's basketball still gets far more than women's. Again, it's probably a lot closer at a place like South Carolina, but men's basketball is still dominates in regards to ratings and all that compared. But I mean, yeah, it's two separate things. Like, it doesn't, like, you know what I mean? Like, why we don't have to compare them. You know what I mean? They're two separate things. So anyways, guys, getting back into your questions. Bruce says, Rattler's the toughest SOB according to Beaver. Heck, he has to be with our pitiful offensive line. You're correct. Anthony says, crystal ball prediction with the state of things now with the team. Wins against last 3 games. I'm a Tiger for life, and this game, to me, this year is a pick'em, no bets game. He says it feels like a Tommy West era team. Yeah, Carolina Clemson's going to be very, very, very interesting. No doubt. No doubt. Midnight Rider. Beamer's just one of those guys that can't help but be goofy. I mean, Beamer just is who he is, man. Austin Gregory says, I'm starting to regret laughing at Marler's 5-7 joke to Kirby at media days. Little did we know that'd end up being a goal for us. Ethan K. Muschamp got 5 years as bad as he was, so I feel it's only fair that Beamer's given 5 years unless they go 0-12 next year. I think Beamer will get 5 years, Ethan. I agree with you. I think Beamer's going to get 5 years. No matter what, I think he'll get till 2025 minimum. And I think this is how it plays out. You're probably going 5-7. Maybe you go 6-6. Let's just say you go 5-7 this year. Let's say you just miss out on a bowl game. So this year takes place, right? I think after this year, I think Beamer's seat starts to warm up. You go into next year with the Norris Sellers, the schedule. See, that's what's intriguing about 2024 is you have all these different factors. And, like, I look at the team next year, guys, and I'm like, how is this team going to be better losing Spencer Rattler, right? But no matter what it is, whatever the commentary is, guys, there's no excuse. You got to go win 7 or 8 games, right? If you go 6-6 or worse next year, I think Beamer is legitimately on the hot seat going into year 5. And if they don't win 7 or more games in year 5, I think he's gone. I think he's gone. You don't get longer than 5 years in college football. You just don't. You just don't, guys. You don't get longer than 5 years. You don't. So I think he'll get his 5. But I don't think he gets more than 5. I think if you're not winning 7 or 8 games by 2025, I think that'll be it. Let's see. Braddock 843. I said we go all in on Beamer. Let's see where it goes. Braddock, I mean, why not? Lock in for the long haul, man. Lock in for the long haul. But the only thing I'll say, Braddock, to this, you're going to have a real tough time convincing people to continue giving money, their hard-earned money, when it's just like, hey, he's here, win or lose, doesn't matter. If fans don't feel the commitment to winning from their school, they're not going to exhibit the commitment to winning with their wallets. Let's see. Mark Anderson, Texas A&M defensive line is going to kill our offensive line. You might be right, Peyton. Mark Anderson. I'm looking at Peyton's comment. Slowly starting to seem like the dark ages are on the horizon yet again. I mean, it is tough right now. How about this? We've got a per sources here. This is why you got to join the Big Cock Club Discord, guys. This is breaking news right now. Hold on, let me get to it. Breaking news that just dropped in our Discord. This coming from the BigSpur.com. Freshman defensive lineman Xavier McLeod is no longer with the Gamecocks football team. The Big Spur learned about his departure from the program on Wednesday afternoon. Wow. Xavier McLeod. How does another one bite the dust? Another one. So you add that on to Montague Rames and Cameron Upshaw and Anthony Rose. Xavier McLeod no longer with the Gamecocks football team. I mean, when it rains, it pours, folks. When it rains, it pours. So let's see. Xavier McLeod. Here we go. Recruiting. Xavier McLeod, guys, was a 4-star defensive lineman out of Camden, South Carolina. 4-star D lineman. Gone. No longer with the team. Wow. That's brutal, man. That's a position in which you are already super thin at. Wow. That hurts. That hurts, man. Again, when it rains, it pours, guys. When it rains, it pours. When it rains, it pours. Ruben Nation says, dude was lazy AF in high school and had a shitty attitude, supposed the same at South Carolina. Still, Ruben Nation, that's tough, man. And I mean, you're not exactly killing it on the recruiting trail right now with the defensive linemen, so that's Steve Austin, say what you want about Beamer's future, but I think we should all collectively agree Ray Tanner needs to go. Yeah, I don't know why he's still in that position, my friend. I don't. I don't know why he's still in that position. So, let's see. Stand on business. He says, we are here, slapdicks. Ethan K, I'm ready for men's sports to be exciting again. I will say if the Beamer experience fails, I think Tanner will have no choice but to call it career as an AD. Indeed. Bruce says the only sport that we're good at is women's basketball. Baseball's good. I would say hold on with baseball. Hold on with baseball. That's, you know. Let's see. Coach Ford says, I'm worried that like Muschamp, we keep extending it for recruiting, and then we end up owing a mint and settle for another Beamer. Coach Ford talking about Beamer's contract. I'm not exactly sure what it looks like right now, Coach Ford, the contract. Madison, I gave high expectations before the season started. That was due to what I saw at the end of last year. I give praise to Spencer Rattler for having to find a way to succeed. He continues, our current situation has to turn around, or this young man could get hurt. That is way too many sacks, period. Yeah, I mean, it's Madison. I was someone, I can imagine how you feel, Madison, because I was someone that admittedly, obviously, I came into this season with, I think, very grounded, realistic expectations, picked 7-5. Many Gamecock fans got upset. And, oh, you're picking that as a loss? You're picking this as a loss? I got clowned by so many slapdicks for my prediction or what have you. And listen, I said before the season, what did I say, guys? What did I say? And here's the new rule. I got a new rule I'm about to start applying. I'm going to go through in the summer when I do my predictions. I'm going to make my predictions, and whatever my predictions are, I'm going to take one win off. Because every year that I've given predictions, South Carolina has underachieved my picks. Even with me keeping things realistic and feeling like I'm staying grounded. Last year was the first time they matched them. I picked 8-4. Carolina went 8-4, right? But every year, Carolina has never exceeded my expectations or my predictions. They've only either just met them or most of the times fallen short of them. So I'm going to start just make my picks and then be like, you know what? I'm minusing one win. I'm minusing a win. That's what I'm doing from now on. Because every year it seems like I give Carolina too much credit. Even when I try to be grounded and realistic. It's just crazy. T says the fact that we aren't getting up for big games, it's giving Muskant vibes. Yeah, there's unfortunately some Muschampish vibes for sure. Coach Ford says still down a critical recruit for which we want to credit Beamer. Brewer Nation said only reason he won Mr. Football is because he was committed to SC. Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's Xavier McLeod. That's really unfortunate. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. That's, I mean, at a position of need, too, guys, where like you flex this recruiting class and how well you did and what have you. I mean, that's brutal. That's absolutely brutal. So, guys, that being said, we're going to jump into one final break. On the other side, we'll close out the show in style, taking more of your questions, your comments, your voicemails, and more. All that on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars. And there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars or give them a call today at 843-681-8800. 8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, October the 25th. Final 10 minutes or so here on this Wednesday, guys. Let me remind you, all TDC will air live tomorrow and Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, morning TDC because of travel. Because of travel. So we will rock 9 to 11 tomorrow, then Inside the Gamecocks at 11:30. And then on Friday, guys, we got a jam-packed show on Friday. We've got 3 guests back to back to back. We've got my good friend Mark Ryan. Then we got Jake Crane. Then we've got David Nuno of Texags. So it'll probably be a little bit longer than a 2-hour show on Friday, which will be a lot of fun, guys. But again, bottom line is this: content bleeding out the eyeballs. I appreciate each and every single one of you. By the way, thank y'all so much to those who are going on YouTube and checking out the clips and such and watching the videos. And we've had a great response from that. And guys, we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to do that. Really, really making YouTube an emphasis. And, know there's an audience there that wants the visual along with the audio. So thank y'all so much for tuning in on the YouTube side of things. Per the Big Cock Club Discord, I'll just say this, guys. Per the Big Cock Club Discord, Xavier McLeod, sounds like it's not a terrible thing that he's gone. And McLeod didn't leave, Alonzo. He got dismissed. Per sources, I'll just say this, per sources, McLeod was told last week, he told the coaches that he didn't want to travel to Missouri when they needed him because it was too far away and too cold. Apparently, there's also some character issues, says he slacks off during workouts, lazy. So that's unfortunate. I bet it's one of those things where you feel like you can get that out of a kid when you recruit him. When you can get that out of a kid that you when you recruit him, okay, we'll work this out of him, right? We'll get it out of him, and it just the kid's character sucks. It just sucks. So it's unfortunate, man. You can't coach a bad attitude out of a kid, and but like my problem is like, why would you take him? You know what I mean? Like, why would you take him? I guess you take a shot on a guy like that, but like, how bad is the kid's character that he can't even make it through the season? You know what I mean? That's tough, man. That's tough. Justin Martin, Chris, what is Luke Day's future? Do you see Kirby Smart going to the NFL if he wins a third national championship? Justin, I don't know why Kirby would ever leave Georgia, truly. And I don't think he leaves Georgia, Justin, in the middle of the run they're in. I think he wants to see how far he can take it. Luke Day's future, I doubt Luke Day gets canned. I don't think they're going to put the blame on Luke Day. I don't think they're going to put the blame on Luke Day. So, yes, Austin Gregory. Xavier McLeod was Mr. Football in the state of South Carolina. So, yep. Bad attitude, character issues. That's what we're hearing. Either way, Xavier McLeod is gone, and he didn't leave. He was dismissed. So, he was dismissed. When it rains, it pours, those guys. When it rains, it pours. It's just like if it's one thing after another, after another, after another. Alonzo, McLeod played in the Furman game. I think that's the only action I really ever saw him get. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, guys. You can't outwork a bad attitude. So if a kid's got a bad attitude, it's just you can't. What are you supposed to do? I mean, about our guy Bruin Nation. I'm gonna read this one off. Kid was an absolute little arrogant, lazy-ass kid who had talent but thought he was owed something. Sellers got screwed out of that award because he was committed to Syracuse at the time. I love that. Bruin Nation, my friend, you never hold back, and that's why I appreciate you. Robbie Davis texts in. My prediction for Saturday, Texas A&M 34, South Carolina 24, and Texas A&M 38, South Carolina 24. Safe travels. Thank you, Robbie Davis. Okay, so Robbie Davis is picking right at the spread. Going real bold, I see. Jackson, why do you think we had a lot of key players transfer after last season? Jackson, great question. You know, there's different reasons for different guys leaving. I think that Jaheim Bell, I think that was one that made a lot of sense with the way he was used last year or lack of utilization. Marshawn Lloyd's the one that's most confusing. You know, NIL, I think, is a factor with all these guys, but Marshawn Lloyd mentioned he wanted a fresh start, and maybe he was a Satterfield guy. Heck, I don't know. Jordan Birch, NIL, chasing the bag. Gilbert Edmond chasing the bag. I think he had he was fond of FSU. So when they came calling, I think that was kind of a no-brainer for him. But you know, the thing you look back, I mean, they're all Muschamp guys. So that's at least, you know, I would say I'm not raising red flags yet when it's like they're all Muschamp guys. And, you know, that's bound to happen, right? You got a new coach that's you know, those aren't his guys. Those aren't his players. So I understand it, but it definitely hurt. That roster turnover, man, it killed South Carolina. Panic Ritter texts in, why was Clayton White brought back last season? The defense wasn't that good. He wasn't a proven coach. I mean, to be fair, Ritter, like the defense was really good in year one. Really, really good. The defense was good in year one. So you couldn't not bring him back. Guys, I tell you, I don't understand it. Why does Carolina whiff so much on the D-line and recruiting? And this is a question much more well-suited for JC because those guys follow recruiting religiously. I don't know, though, man. It just seems like South Carolina, it just I don't know. D-line recruiting of late. I don't know. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. You can call that number. You can text that number, whatever you like, as we close out the show here on this Wednesday. Brewer Nation says it was Jimmy Lindsay's fault. It was Jimmy Lindsay's fault. Maybe you're right. Here we go. We're taking voicemails. I don't know. I don't know if Skyland knows I'm live. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if Skyland knows I'm live. Anyways, I'm sure he's probably calling about the Xavier McLeod stuff, which we obviously already know. Xavier McLeod no longer with the program. So again, if it's not one thing, it's another, guys. When it rains, it pours. I'll have my prediction locked in tomorrow, guys. But I mean, I'll just put it to you this way. And I saw some tweets this morning about this is the week, guys. South Carolina does something crazy that they don't do. It's that here comes the magic. Here comes the woo. Guys, here's what I think we got to stop doing. We've got to put Tennessee and Clemson of last year in their own separate category. South Carolina caught lightning in a bottle for 2 weeks. And it was a glorious 2 weeks, a 2 weeks that none of us will ever give back, a 2 weeks that none of us will ever forget. But it was nothing short of catching lightning in a bottle. That's not who South Carolina is. And also, when you look at this year and you look at a game like Texas A&M and you look down the stretch and say, well, maybe South Carolina, backs against the wall, they can do it again. Guys, this is a completely different roster than what it was last year. Completely different cast of characters. So while South Carolina was able to be resilient in Tennessee and Clemson last year, I don't think that means that's going to happen again. And so you look at the Texas A&M game, you're just outmanned. I drank the Kool-Aid last week going into Mizzou. Oh, Gamecocks are going to rally, play with their hair on fire. They're going to be backs against the wall and do it for Coach Beamer. And I look like a damn fool. I'll lock in my official prediction tomorrow, but I'm not doing that again. This is just a bad football team. That team last year, they played poorly, but you felt like that was a good football team. This is just a bad football team. Like, this is a bad football team. They can't run the ball. They can barely stop the run. They sure as hell can't stop the pass. They can't get opponents off the field on third down. They can't protect Spencer Rattler. They can't stay healthy. I mean, they can't force turnovers. This team doesn't do much of anything well. That's just the reality, guys. And it's a limp to the finish. And I see my guy Mitch West commenting, game will likely be 21-0 quickly. A&M will cruise in the second half. Final will be 34-10. Then we come home again, what will be Cockvember. 4-0, baby. Let's go. Cockvember, Mitch. I love that. Cockvember. Cheers to Cockvember. This has certainly been an October to forget. That's for sure. That's for sure. Guys, that being said, we're going to go and wrap it up. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much, guys, for continuing to engage, conversate, bring the heat during the daily mailbag segment every single day. Let's see. Oh, word. Okay, so Xavier McLeod, the rumor is he refused to travel without being named the starter. God. If that's the case, see ya. See ya. Anyways, guys, on that note, be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content as well. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, guys. We drop daily podcasts there as well. And, of course, guys, all over social media, content bleeding out of the eyeballs. Do not forget, We'll be in Hilton Head tomorrow and Friday, TDC 9 to 11 a.m. So morning TDC tomorrow and Friday. And then, of course, on Saturday, our watch party at Carolina Cigars at the Cigar Lounge for Gamecocks and Aggies. Going to be one hell of a time, a noon kickoff. I'll be there around 11 or so. Come on out. And, guys, win or lose, them stogies are still smoked. So come on out, smoke some stogies, have some fun, watch some ball, and, we'll grind through win or lose together, whatever it might be. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.